Fact of the day. Um, I'm Jennifer and I'll be your host. I've been camping basically every year since I've been born, so I know my way around a fire. And I think that it's a very useful fact for everybody to know, whether you're just camping or you happen to be in an unfortunate situation. Um, Campfires are good for providing heat and cooking food and basically anything else you can find camping. Um, First, in my speech, I want to talk about creating the base for your fire, then building the fire, and then finally putting out the fire. First off, you want to build your base. So, according to Gregory Crouch, and to build a fire from Popular Mechanics, you want to create a fire mound. As you can see in the top left photo, you want to find a barren space where there's not much vegetation, so that you won't risk setting anything on fire, because we don't want to do that. And some good materials that you could build up your base with would be loose soil, sand, or even gravel, just things that would not have a high chance of catching on fire. And you really want to avoid digging holes, because as you always hear, you want to take only photos, so you don't want to dig any holes, because then you're leaving your site damaged. And then you want to avoid building your entire mound out of rocks, because there may be some rocks that could potentially not handle the heat and possibly explode. And that may be an extreme, but you want to avoid that at all costs. Then you would place the tinder in the pit. So tinder is small, very lightweight, dry, flammable material, and this is what you put at the base of your fire to get that starter flame. And so, as Jeff Adams says in How to Start a Campfire in 2014, he lists all these more accessible materials that you could find maybe on site, such as wood shavings, paper, and then he also states some more unconventional ones like wax and dryer lint. And then you have Paul Robert in How Not to Die in the Woods from Sierra, and he tells us that one of the most effective ways of having tinder is petroleum jelly doused lint. So if you ever have some lint and petroleum jelly, that would be your go-to material for tinder. After the tinder, you want to place your kindling. Kindling is slightly larger than tinder. It's typically sticks, twigs, anything more substantial that can start to give your fire some momentum. And then you go on to the firewood. So the firewood is where you get your real source of heat. It's what the main fuel source of the fire is. It's typically logs, like about 1 to 5 inches in diameter, and you can find it on site, or you can have the pre-cut logs, such as in the picture. Once you have all these pieces, you have to decide how you're going to arrange your wood. There are various ways of doing this. There's the teepee method, where you arrange your logs around your tinder and your kindling in a teepee fashion. And then there's the lean-to method, where you could either stick your logs into the ground at approximately a 30-degree angle, or lean it up against the log and have your kindling and tinder underneath it. Then there's the crossfire, where you're placing your kindling in a cross pattern over your tinder and then placing your logs on top. Or the log cabin, where you're building up your logs like a log cabin around your tinder and kindling. And all of these are meant to allow for air to come into your fire and let your fire breathe, so it doesn't die out very quickly. Then the fun starts. You start the fire. So Keith McCafferty in Hot Stuff from Field and Stream, he talks about many ways that you can start a fire, whether it be with a match, a lighter, a stick, magnifying glass, or just simply a flint and some metal. And he states that one of the most effective ways, other than of course a lighter, is to use a flint and metal. So it'd be helpful to have that. But if you don't, there are other ways. So finally, when you're all done, you want to put out your fire. This is very important for many reasons, but most importantly, you don't want to start forest fires, especially California being so dry. In order to properly put out your fire, you want to slowly pour the water onto the embers, and as you're doing this, or either periodically through, you want to stir the embers to ensure that all of the water is getting into the embers. And then before you leave your campsite, you always want to check that the embers are out. There's no redness in the embers at all. So I hope you learned something about fires today. I hope that my points came clear of how to build a base, how to build your fire, and how to properly put it out. And just remember, always put out your fires because Smokey's always watching.